Well, senators today had a chance to grill President Obama's pick for Treasury Secretary. A possible vote today on the nomination of Jack Lew. He's President Obama's chief of staff and former head of the Office of Management and Budget. And from his ideas on generating economic growth to his experience on Wall Street, all of that was on the table and up for discussion before the Senate Finance Committee. I'm going to bring in now Peter Schiff, president of Euro-Pacific Capital, to discuss. Peter, nice to see you. So I want to kind of get into the controversy discussed today. Some of his own finances are coming into question. A bonus that he received while working at Citibank of nearly $1 million. Keep in mind, this is back in 2008 when this whole taxpayer bailout of the big banks was going on. So, Peter, what do we know about his role at Citibank, and is this something we should be concerned about?
Well, look, remember, a lot of former Treasury officials were at Citibank. Look at Robert Rubin, right? He rode that company down. I think they made a lot of mistakes. But also look at Geithner. Look at, when he was originally appointed, he had his own tax problems. It turned out that he didn't even understand the income tax because I forget what mistakes he made. Remember, he had to amend his return. So it seems like screwing up your own finances is one of the job requirements, and I think it's it makes sense because the U.S. government is a wreck. We don't even have a Secretary of the Treasury. We have a Secretary of the Debt because there is no Treasury. The Treasury is empty. All we've got is liabilities.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison that you make, saying that it's a qualification to be Treasury Secretary. Of course, this calls into question who benefited from the taxpayer bailout of the big banks in 2008. Lew certainly is one of the beneficiaries, I should say.
Well, the beneficiaries were certainly people who had loaned money to the banks, employees of the banks. But the big losers, I think, were the American public, the U.S. economy in general. Eventually, the losers are going to be holders of U.S. treasuries, holders of any U.S. dollar-denominated debt, because in order to save the banks, they basically have destroyed the dollar. I think the dollar is kind of like a zombie currency. It's walking dead. Only a lot of people haven't figured it out yet, so it still appears to be alive, but I think it's only a matter of time.
Actually, Peter, we do have that clip where he was grilled on this very issue today. Let's take a listen.
Explain why it might be morally acceptable to take close to $1 million out of a company that was functionally insolvent and about to receive $1 billion of taxpayers' support.
Senator, in 2008, I was an employee in the private sector. I was compensated in a manner consistent with other people who did the kind of work that I did in the industry.
All right, so he's saying, I got pretty good compensation, but so did my fellow Wall Street colleagues.
Hey, I was just following orders, That's what, yeah, I mean, he was incompetent. Look, maybe he was incompetent in the private sector, and so he is qualified to bring that incompetence to the public sector. I mean, that's pretty much your requirement. Remember, I mean, we are, as a nation, in worse financial shape than those banks were. It's just that we have a printing press and the banks didn't. So we're able to paper it over for a while longer.
All right, Peter, another criticism. President Obama, last year, during his campaign, he was kind of criticizing offshore accounts. But it's reported that Lew has one of these accounts in the Cayman Islands. Is this hypocritical?
Well, hypocrisy, again, is one of the requirements for the job. I mean, they're all hypocrites in Washington. Just about everything they say. Look at President Obama's favorite billionaire, Warren Buffett. He's always talking about how he wants to pay lower taxes, yet he's suing the IRS to reduce his taxes, and he's doing everything he can to minimize those taxes. So they always say one thing publicly, but they do the opposite privately.
All right, we have about a minute left. I want to ask you, what are your thoughts? Will his approach be much different than that of his predecessor, Timothy Geithner?
Unfortunately, it won't be. It'll be more of the same. I mean, basically what the job of the Secretary of the Debt is to convince central banks, foreign central banks, and investors around the world to loan the U.S. government money even though it can't pay it back. I mean, I guess you could say it's a difficult job convincing the world to vendor finance a deadbeat nation, but unfortunately, that's the situation that we're in. And he's just trying to, make sure that we can keep selling bonds before the bottom drops out of the market. He's just a PR man. And ultimately, what he's there to do is talk up the president. He's not there to actually give the president solid advice on the finances of the country. He's there to rubber stamp the president's agenda and make sure there's enough buyers for our debt so we can finance this massive expansion of government long enough to get him reelected. Or, in the case of Obama, I mean, they've already gotten him reelected. Maybe they think they can get another Democrat elected in 2016 if they can keep this Ponzi scheme going for 4 more years. I just think it's too big at this point. I would be very surprised if they got out of Dodge in time this time.
The always outspoken Peter Schiff. Appreciate you coming on, Peter. That was Peter Schiff, president of Euro Pacific Capital.